Knuckleheads, welcome to the Fighters Rep Podcast, episode 76. I'm your host, the Fighters Rep Fez. Apologies for the prior technical difficulties we were having. And I just wanted to say, welcome. This is the Devin Haney versus Brian Norman prediction. This is what we're going to be talking about live today. It's on the fantastic card that DAZN is giving us this Saturday, the Ring 4 Night of the Champions, live from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Man, it's something I wish I could go check out in person, but unfortunately, I'm a working man and it's difficult making a living and being a YouTuber at the same time. But nonetheless, this is a fantastic co-main event fight to a delicious main event entree between David El Bandera Roja Benavides and Anthony the Beast from the East Yard. We've also got studs on the undercard in the form of Abdullah Mason and Sam Noakes. And we've also got Jesse Bam Rodriguez and Fernando Martinez going at it. I'm really excited, obviously, about Abdullah Mason and for Jesse Bam Rodriguez. Those are two of my favorite upcomers coming up right now. You've also got Vito Mielnicki Jr. versus Samuel Nemoma. I believe that's how you say it. That's going to be at the bottom of the card. So, I think Vito's fights are pretty exciting too. All in all, looks like a really exciting card with this fight in particular, this Haney-Brian Norman fight kind of being the co-main event. And it's something I wanted to talk about live because we go live every Monday at 7 p.m. right here on the YouTube channel. So be sure to join me. And we'll make history together, man. We'll make boxing history together. So first and foremost, this fight has had a pretty exciting and a pretty heated buildup, right? And that kind of always adds spice to the fights, right? Because you've got both guys are young guys, with Brian Norman being a few years younger at just 24. Haney being the more experienced guy, but the guy with less experience really as a welterweight, right? Haney hasn't been at welterweight for very long. Fought Jose Ramirez last in May, and so hasn't really been a welterweight for too long. And then you've got Brian Norman Jr., right, who's the WBO welterweight champ. So despite being the younger guy, has more natural experience in the welterweight division, and I think that's going to benefit him big time, right? I do think that the trash talk and the gamesmanship from Devin Haney, it can be obnoxious. I find it obnoxious. I personally think he's trying too hard, right? I think Devin Haney's trying too hard. But I do think the gamesmanship and the trash talk can work against certain people. But when you're talking about a guy, in my opinion, right? This is just my opinion. In Brian Norman Jr. from Decatur, Georgia, right? And me personally, I'm from Miami, Florida. Not the South, but still down in Florida. You've got a mentality down there where that kind of trash talk doesn't always serve to get in a person's head. Sometimes it serves to inspire somebody and bring that dog out. And from what I've heard about Brian Norman Jr. through the grapevine, that is probably something. All the trash talk and buildup and the goofiness. I think I saw Devin Haney's bodyguard or whoever grab him by the shirt or whatever it was. I think that's all just going to get Brian Norman Jr. up even more for this fight, right? And I don't think that, that strategy is going to work for Devin Haney. Another thing I wanted to talk about in this fight is the fact that these guys are nearly identical when it comes to height and reach, right? I've seen Devin Haney listed at 5'9" and 5'8". I've seen Brian Norman listed at 5'8", and I've seen both. It's pretty incredible. Both listed as having a 72-inch reach. So nearly, if not identical, size and reach. And I look forward to kind of, seeing them step to each other at the weigh-in barefoot, hopefully, and seeing, who's really the bigger guy. If there's a guy that's lying about their height and reach or not, it'll remain to be seen. But if we go by what they're listed, these guys, are absolutely identical. Also, Brian Norman Jr., knuckleheads, 30 fights, 28 wins with 2 no contests, right? 28 wins with 2 no contests, 22 wins coming by way of knockout. Whereas you have the Dream, Devin Haney, 33 total fights, just 3 more, right? Despite being 3 years older. Only 15 wins by KO. No losses, but also 1 no contest, that infamous no contest against Ryan Garcia, where so many people thought he got beat. Now, look, I want to say something. As obnoxious as I think Devin Haney can be when he's trying to build a fight, right? Him and his entourage. I think they're otherworldly levels of obnoxious. I mean, if I had to pick the most obnoxious entourage in the universe to follow me around before my fight, I would pick Devin Haney's entourage. I think they're obnoxious. That being said, I was one of the few people, and you guys might get turned off by this, but I don't care. I was one of the few people on this planet that looked, for whatever reason, at the Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney situation and felt like it was Devin Haney that was wronged, right? And no, I don't believe, as so many people defending Garcia did, that PEDs are not a big deal and there was only a little bit and this and that, and it can't affect your performance if it's only a little bit or whatever. And taking PEDs, is not going to help you or prevent you from blocking a left hand or whatever. I don't believe any of that. PEDs, in my opinion, give you more strength. They give you more speed. They give you more stamina. And that's the reason they're banned in sport, right? So despite thinking, I don't want you guys to think I'm biased in any way, right? I try to remain objective as possible at all times. Promoter/attorney, and it's that attorney part that tries to keep me neutral and objective. As obnoxious as Devin Haney is, I actually think he's a fighter with a lot of skill. I don't believe he's lived up to his potential. I think that fight against Ryan Garcia has damaged his style, right? And I want to see him get back to his old style. I want to see him back to the Devin Haney we saw against Regis Prograis, because that was the best one I ever saw. That one was not there for the Garcia fight, and the Garcia fight actually reverted him, almost like what happened with Anthony Joshua against Andy Ruiz, right? It made him very timid. That's what we saw in the Jose Ramirez fight. Devin Haney is a fighter that can really fight. And despite his team being obnoxious, I felt he was wronged. And I agree with that no contest, and I'm glad that happened. Right? That being said, it's going to depend which Devin Haney shows up. More than anything, it's going to depend which Devin Haney shows up to determine who wins this fight on Saturday against Brian Norman Jr. By the way, shout out to Kamikaze. He's in there. He's in here. Shout out to anyone who's in here. If you say anything, if you leave a comment, I'm going to read it. We're going to talk about it. Kamikaze says, saludos, fighters rep. Saludos, my brother. Appreciate you being in here. This is an interesting fight. Norman is favored, but I feel like Haney rises to his opposition. You're absolutely right about that. And I think this could be a UD for Haney. I hope Benavidez versus Yard delivers a stoppage. Look, I don't see how Benavidez versus Yard. I mean, it's possible Benavidez versus Yard doesn't deliver a stoppage, but I think if it doesn't, just based on the way those two guys fight, it's a war. It's a rumble. I mean, these guys come to fight, right? That's what I put in my prediction yesterday that I dropped here. As far as Norman being favored, I actually saw a video today, I believe it was from Tim Bradley, saying that Haney is being favored in Vegas, which, is interesting, but I can't really knock them for thinking that. Haney is a hell of a mover. even when he's not fighting, he can avoid punishment. He's got better footwork, I think, than Brian Norman. He's going to be able to get out the way, right? The question is he going to be able to keep him off of him? Norman, in my opinion, is very aggressive, intelligent aggression, right? Almost fights in the Mexican style, sort of, but, maybe a touch more American intelligent slickness involved as far as the boxing goes. Not just a brawler like you would expect from the Mexican style, but a bit of a hybrid, right, between American and Mexican style. That's how I see Brian Norman when he's really firing on all cylinders. Haney, with his experience, might be able to just prevent all of that. With his movement, might be able to just nullify the whole game plan of Brian Norman, right? Which I think is going to be to just walk Haney down, come after him, and try to get him out of there, really. I mean, this kid's a dog, and he comes to fight. And every time I see Brian Norman, it might not be the most exciting fight, but it's going to depend on the opponent, right? It's not up to him whether it's exciting or not. He's going to bring it. If his opponent brings it, it's going to be a hell of a fight. If his opponent tries to get away and run and duck and dodge, it could get ugly. And I'm hoping that's not what we get from Devin Haney. But that's what I mean when I say it's going to depend on the Devin Haney that shows up for this fight. Because if it's the Devin Haney that showed up versus Jose Ramirez, we are going to be bored out of our minds in that fight, waiting for something to happen. And luckily for us, we're going to have a heck of a card surrounding this co-main event. And I think it's only a co-main event because, there's Norman's title on the line. I mean, you wouldn't put, you wouldn't put a non-title fight between these two as co-main event. I think it's co-main event because Norman's title's on the line, and these guys are just significantly more far along and popular as of right now, I guess, than the other guys on the card. I mean, I think you could make the argument for Jesse Rodriguez, but Fernando Martinez, his opponent, not so much, but this card is a co-main event. I think it's couched between a bunch of really good fights. And so that's why I'm not terrified if it turns out to be a stinker. But I'm really hoping I get the Devin Haney I got when he fought Regis Prograis. And not the Devin Haney I got when he had the off night, I think, versus Ryan Garcia, who had PEDs in his system. And definitely not the Devin Haney we saw at that Times Square event in New York against Jose Ramirez. I don't want to see that. Let's get right back to it real quick, though. Haney, Norman, same height, same dimensions. Norman, more of a natural welterweight. I think Haney, a better boxer, assuming he's still boxing and not just running away for the entirety of this fight. I think it's going to go to a decision. I do think it's going to go to a decision. And I'm leaning towards Devin Haney. I really am. I mean, I could see Norman winning this fight for sure, right? 100% I could see Norman winning this fight, especially if the Haney that shows up last time against Jose Ramirez shows up. Or the one that showed up against Ryan Garcia. But if Devin Haney is somehow back, gets his groove back, if you will, right? Gets that Bay Area groove back and is firing on all cylinders, Devin Haney is hard to beat. Devin Haney's never lost. Neither has Brian Norman. But Devin Haney has never lost, and in my opinion, he's an elite boxer that has yet to live up to his potential. Brian Norman has some talent, but I don't think Brian Norman has the talent and the skills that a Devin Haney has. Brian Norman is a good boxer puncher. Devin Haney is an elite, in my opinion, boxer. And if he can, once again, I'm reiterating. Tap back into that Devin Haney that fought Regis Prograis. We are going to have a hell of a fight on our hands. We are going to have a hell of a fight on our hands because Norman's going to come to fight. So I'm hoping we get that Devin Haney. So my prediction for this fight, right, Devin Haney versus Brian Norman, I can see Devin Haney winning this fight by unanimous decision, outpointing Brian Norman. I think Norman's aggression in this fight works against him, and I just think he's not as talented of a fighter. I just got to call a spade a spade. Now, that being said, there could be shaky moments for Devin Haney in this fight. But I think at their best, if both of them come in at their best, right now I would take Devin Haney. Right now I would take Devin Haney, a bit older, a bit more mature, a little bit more skill. So decision, unanimous, that's my prediction. Devin Haney. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, join the channel. Get your merchandise, the links below. I'll greatly appreciate it. Now, that being said, Kamikaze talks about Benavidez versus Yard delivering a stoppage. I made my prediction yesterday. I do think David Benavidez wins his fight. I think Bam Rodriguez wins his on this card, and I think Abdullah Mason wins his as well, right? And I'm excited. I'm excited about not only how Bam Rodriguez is treated and greeted by the Saudi crowd when he heads out there, but especially how Abdullah Mason gets, treated and greeted by the Saudi crowd with a name like Abdullah. He's probably going to get a lot of love out there. That being said, Benavidez versus Yard, even though I already gave my prediction on that fight, I just cannot wait for that fight. I got to be honest with you guys. I mean, if you've been watching Benavidez and Yard as long as I have, you've never seen these guys in a boring fight. I have so much respect. Let me tell you guys something. I got so much respect, especially after they did that little face-off sit-down that they do for boxing events. I have so much respect and so much more respect now for Anthony Yard. I've always, obviously, I'm a big fan of David Benavidez. I've always been a big fan of Anthony Yard, too. I've actually followed his career pretty closely. I've always been a fan. Lions in the camp. I have so much respect for Anthony Yard because he didn't have to take this fight, right? Here's a guy in his 30s. This is a huge risk for him. His back really is against the wall, as he said in that interview, but he just believes he performs better with his back against the wall. Here's a guy who came up short in his only 2 real title fights, right? First against Sergey Kovalev, he got stopped. And again against Artur Beterbiev, where he got stopped again. And I don't think there's any shame in your game when you get stopped by 2 of the most vicious punchers in recent history at light heavyweight. I mean, Artur Beterbiev and Sergey Kovalev are absolute animals at the time they fought Anthony Yard, and getting stopped by those guys is not a terrible thing, especially when it was kind of later on in the fight. That being said, I'm sure that experience is going to help Anthony Yard in that fight. And he's saying that's the reason he wanted this fight. Mind you, David Benavidez said this is the only guy, he pointed at Anthony Yard, he's the only guy that took the fight. He's the only guy that took the fight. So much respect for me for Anthony Yard. I love his fighting style. He's got huge balls. All these dudes in the UK just want to fight. I love it. I love it. That's why I'm a fan of Dillian White, Derek Chisora, Anthony Yard, Carl Froch. I love all these guys. I love them. Tyson Fury, whatever. Anthony Joshua. I'm a big fan. I think they're the best. I think they have the best culture. Them in Mexico have the best fight culture. I love it. I love it. Anthony Yard deserves a lot of respect for taking this fight, and it's not a surprise that he took the fight. I love the way the guy fights too. I mean, if you've seen him fight in every fight, this guy's willing to go out on his shield, and he's going to get hit with a lot of shots against David Benavidez. And David Benavidez is going to get hit with a lot of shots by Anthony Yarde. And my worry for Yarde is that he's not as talented as David Benavidez. He doesn't have the experience as far as the amateur pedigree and just the skill, the high-level skill that David Benavidez does. I think Benavidez is a technically superior fighter, but physically, even though Benavidez is the taller guy with the longer reach, Anthony Yarde is a big, strong, broad, stocky guy, man. And if he lands those shots correctly, he can really hurt David Benavidez. That's the danger for Benavidez in this fight. The other thing is, we saw Benavidez get a decision against Gvozdyk way beyond his loss to Beterbiev, where Beterbiev stopped him. So it's not the same power coming back at Anthony Yarde that Anthony Yarde faced in Beterbiev or Kovalev. It's just not in David Benavidez. Will it ever be? Will David Benavidez ever be that big one-punch power knockout guy at light heavyweight? I don't know, but I don't think he is. I think he's a natural 168-pounder. He did what he had to do down there. And he said, you know what? I beat up everybody down here. I'm over this. I'm moving up to 175 for a new adventure. And he's looked good. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's, it's David Benavidez. He's an absolute stud, and I still think he wins this fight. But it's a dangerous fight. Away from home, way out of your time zone. While, to be honest, for Yarde, it's not going to be that big of a difference. Nowhere near the difference it's going to be for David Benavidez as it is for Yarde. So Yarde's going to have that, some advantages here built in. Been a light heavyweight longer. Had better experience at light heavyweight, for sure. Is a fully developed grown man, right? Benavidez still acclimating to the weight, still just, I think, 28, 29 years old, still hasn't primed. But that being said, he's so good. He's so gifted. I'm excited for this fight. I'm not sure. Listen, I guess my point is, even if it doesn't deliver a stoppage, Kamikaze, this is going to be an absolute war. This is going to be an absolute war. It's going to be worth the price of admission, not only to the event, but to buy you a ticket and go check out Riyadh's season. They're not even paying me to say that. By the way, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, join the channel, get your Fighters Rep merch in the link below. This is actually not Fighters Rep merch. This is fighter development. This is a friend of mine, Coach Chanarith Pot. This is his brand. He develops kickboxers and strikers down here in Southern California. He gave me this shirt. Shout out to him. But get your Fighters Rep merch in the link below, man. I'd greatly appreciate it. It helps me continue to build this channel. If you join us just $9.99, I'd really appreciate it. Or if you drop a super chat, whatever it is, whatever you do, it's just going to get reinvested back into this channel. And for me to continue to build the channel and make it better. I will let you guys know I am pretty charitable. With the money that gets spent on this channel, I have on multiple occasions sponsored fighters. Might even sponsor a couple local baseball teams or whatever it is. Down to do whatever it is to help out, young athletes. Because that's what we do. These sports keep these kids, they keep them on the straight and narrow. They keep them off the streets. And that's what we want for these kids. So yeah, David Benavidez, man, versus Anthony Yarde. I think it's going to be a great fight. I think that's just going to be an insanely entertaining fight. I'm hoping we get an entertaining fight out of Devin Haney versus Brian Norman. I'm really hoping we get that Devin Haney back from that Regis Prograis fight. Jesse Bam Rodriguez, man, he's not coming to play. That dude ain't playing the radio, like my boy James Mann down in Miami used to say. He ain't playing the radio, man. That kid is elite. Sam Noakes versus Abdullah Mason. I think that's going to be a fun fight. Noakes ain't no joke. 17 fights, 17 wins, 15 wins by knockout. But 5'8", right? 5'8" versus Abdullah Mason, who is 5'9" with a 74-inch reach. Man, the kid looks great too. 19 wins, 17 KOs. So a few more wins, a little bit more experience than Sam Noakes. But either way, man, I think it's going to be a hell of a fight too, if I'm being honest. 28-year-old Noakes versus 21-year-old Mason. That's a bit of a scary thing, I'll tell you, as a promoter. As a promoter, that was always a consideration for me. When I had a guy that was not a fully developed man, right, like an early 20s kid, putting him in there against a late 20s or 30-year-old as a kickboxing promoter, which I did for 7 years, that was something that always gave me pause, and it was something that even some coaches definitely considered, right? Because even if the records and the experience is about the same, a 21-year-old is not developed the way a 25, 28, 30-year-old is. It's just not. Sometimes it's like a man versus a kid, right? And you don't want to extinguish that fire too early, like we saw with the likes of, one kid I think of right off the bat is Sage Northcutt. I felt like they kind of put him in there too hard, too soon. He did have a bit of a comeback here, but, it just was never the same guy. And you don't want to do that, especially to boxers. So, you got to be very careful. For whatever reason, boxers, when they get a loss, it affects them a lot more deeply, in my opinion, than MMA fighters. I think the resiliency of maybe jiu-jitsu, as much as it pains you to say, because I always joke about how boring jiu-jitsu is, I think the resiliency you build with jiu-jitsu and maybe all the different ways you could win a fight in MMA and not just getting punched in the head for 12 rounds straight, I think maybe that has something to do with an MMA fighter's ability to come back from a loss that boxers, a lot of the time, they don't have. You know what I mean? When a boxer loses, sometimes it's over and you just never see them or hear from them again. And that sucks. So, that's why, I'm always weary of these younger guys taking on these older guys. But nonetheless, I think Abdullah Mason will be fine. But it's just something to consider, right? I think he'll win. I think Bam Rodriguez will win. I think Devin Haney will win. And I think David Benavidez will win. And I think it'll be a bunch of great fights. But, they'll be interesting. They won't be complete wipeouts in the main event and the co-main event, at least, right? So, knuckleheads, that's pretty much all I've got for you guys. If you have any comment, unless you guys have any comments or suggestions or anything else, but leave your comments in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about these fights. Give me your thoughts on Devin Haney versus Brian Norman. I think it's going to be a really fun fight. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, join the channel, be a part of Knucklehead Nation. See you guys soon. Have a great one.